Nice. Welcome to the June SEO Raleigh meetup. That was a little out of order. Thank you very much. This month we're really lucky to have Kelly Phillips talk to us about how to get your blogging on track and get the fundamentals down so that you can get going towards more visitors, more conversions, more money, living on the beach, retiring in Fuji. All of that is possible after just 1 hour of working with Kelly. Kelly's site is WP, which stands for WordPress Plugin Coach. So any and all questions are welcome. You don't have to wait till the end. If something is stuck in your brain, feel free to throw up a hand and stop it. It's very interactive. But without further ado, Kelly Phillips.
Hey, thanks for coming. We have a packed room here. Let me know if the audio is too loud online, because I know the microphone needs to be down a little further. Can everybody in the room hear me okay? All right, good. Let me know if we need to change the volume. We're trying to balance our online volume and our in-room volume here, so it's a little bit of a tightrope. So welcome to everybody here in the room. Welcome to everybody online. We are doing Essential SEO for bloggers in WordPress. Obviously, I am Kelly, and my company is Boost Interactive Media, and we design websites, WordPress websites, and our product WP Plugin Coach, which is wpplugincoach.com here on our slides. This is where we actually teach WordPress. I teach at Wake Tech. Do I have some of my Wake Tech students here tonight? All right. Hey, guys. And then I also offer classes under the Plugin Coach brand here in Raleigh, live classes. So I'd love to see you guys there sometime. And tonight we're going to be talking about essential SEO for bloggers and WordPress. So I've actually asked this question a couple of times. We were going to do a little online poll, but I think we're just going to do a hand raise at the moment. For what platform do you use? So let me see my WordPress people. Okay, and it's the majority of the room is WordPress. Do we have anybody on Blogger? And it's okay. You can raise your hand high. Blogger's not bad. So we have a few on Blogger. We had a Tumblr. All right. Oh, more Tumblrs. Good, good. Medium, I know, is one of Phil's newest favorites. Anybody else on Medium? No? Just, sorry, Phil. What else are you guys using? Squarespace? Joomla? Anything else? All right, so the majority of you in here are WordPress, and those of you that aren't WordPress might be WordPress when you leave, because WordPress is pretty awesome. I am all about WordPress, but I'm also, and you'll hear me say this multiple times, I'm all about the right tool for the job too. So I freely accept other platforms and give advice for other things as well. So always a good thing to know. So the first thing I want to talk to you about a little bit is, why do you blog? So we can kind of divide this into two major categories. There's a lot of little subcategories too. But how many of you have a blog that is for the purpose of blogging? You have a blog, and blogging is the main purpose of your site. You're a food blogger, you're a fashion blogger, you're a tech blogger. Okay. And how many of you are blogging as a way to attract customers to your business? Okay. Again, there's probably way more people doing that than doing straight blogging. How many of you aren't blogging yet and want to start? Hand stay. Okay. How many of you aren't blogging yet and don't want to start? You're not sure why you're here. Oh, we got some. He thought it was speed dating. We already established that earlier before we started the online hangout. We'll fit that in at the end. So it seems like the majority of the room are blogging for the purpose of content marketing and for bringing people into your business. A lot of the principles we're going to talk about will apply to you no matter what kind of blogging you're doing. I may give you some specific instances that will apply to one or the other, but it's really good for you to be clear on which one you are, because I think a lot of people, especially small business owners, start out, they're doing a blog and they think their purpose is blogging. But what they're really trying to do is attract customers. And this whole thing will go much better for you if you really understand the purpose of why you're blogging, that it is to attract customers. This is not a bad thing at all. You're being very helpful. You're offering free content. It's actually a really good thing for your customers and for your fans. Like Phil said, if you guys have questions, you can interrupt me. I would much rather have that interactive back and forth, so you don't need to hold questions until the end. So just raise your hand, wave it around, get my attention, and we'll let you ask your question. How many of you know the difference between WordPress.org and WordPress.com? I'm impressed. Who wants to come up here and say it? Nobody? So let me explain this, because this is one thing that I think people commonly are confused about, even if you're on one of the platforms. WordPress as a platform was created by Matt Mullenweg and a whole big group of developers. Matt is the owner of a company called Automatic, and they decided to keep WordPress open source. All right, I'm going to make somebody tell me what open source is. We've got to have somebody who can say open source. Free? Yeah. What else about open source? What describes open source? Yes, constantly being updated. Why is it constantly being updated? Yes. Lots of people are contributing to it. Lots of developers all over the world are contributing to WordPress to make it a better platform for us. So WordPress is an open platform, and WordPress.org is run by the WordPress Foundation, which is a nonprofit group that kind of oversees that development. And WordPress.com is where Automatic, the company, took the WordPress platform and made it a free blogging platform for us to use. Okay? So WordPress.com is the free blogging platform. How many of you are on WordPress.com? Okay, a good many of you are. And then WordPress.org is the self-hosted full version of WordPress where you have to get a web host and pay for a web host. How many of you are... Okay, we've got quite a few doing each. How many of you knew the difference? About less than half the room. Okay, well now you know you can impress people at cocktail parties. Trust me, it works. They crowd around you to hear the story. Try it, and then report back. All right, so that's the difference between WordPress.com and WordPress.org. Now, there are some things on WordPress.com you cannot do that you can do on WordPress.org. You cannot use plugins, which are extra little bits of functionality that expand your website. So if you wanted an online store, you actually can pay WordPress.com for an online store, but with WordPress.org, you can get a free plugin to do an online store. So that's how you expand your website with WordPress.org. So there's several differences. That's one of the main ones, is that you just don't have as much functionality with WordPress.com. Now, those of you who are on other blogging platforms like Blogger, like I know we had a Squarespace person who commented on the actual boards. There's a couple of things you're going to want to know about the difference between being on a platform like that and being on WordPress. It's control versus simplicity. I have been through, I don't know how many online fights about what's better, WordPress or Squarespace, WordPress or Blogger. A lot of people have very heated, intense arguments about their platform. How many of you are fiercely devoted to your blogging platform? No, well, okay. All right, 3. So maybe I'm not seeing you guys fight out there, but a lot of people are. What I want you guys to understand, especially if anybody here is considering switching, whether you're switching from WordPress to something else or switching from something else to WordPress, that the decision you're really making is between control and simplicity. Okay? So with WordPress, you get control. You can monetize any way you want. You can use your content any way you want. Your SEO on WordPress.org is much better. You have more themes and more features if you're using the full version of WordPress. And your access to the site is under your control, and backups. So you can control your own backups. A lot of this stuff is done for you on the Blogger, on the other platforms. But with WordPress.org, you pretty much can control everything. Now, who can tell me the downside of that? Wait, say it again. It's a lot of work. You have to know what you're doing. One mistake can screw you. That's right. The whole update, you are responsible. All of that control comes with the price of simplicity. If you're on WordPress.com, if you're on Blogger, someone's doing your backups for you. Somebody's maintaining that system for you. If something goes down, what do? You call them or you email them. If your WordPress site goes down, you're the point person. You get to be the one who fixes it. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about control versus simplicity. Being on WordPress.org gives you a lot more control over everything you're doing. Being on some of these other platforms gives you the simplicity. That's a decision you personally have to make. What is right for you? Simplicity is not necessarily a bad answer. So you really have to think about how you work and how much time you're going to spend and how technical you are creating this blog. Okay. The other thing, and this is where most people who are bloggers in particularly, sometimes they get these really wide, scared eyes when I talk about this. It's content ownership. How many of you have read the terms of service for your platform that you're on? Oh, we got a couple. Good. I've read them all. I keep like drifting off while I'm reading them because they're really boring and very difficult to read. But one thing you'll notice is that in pretty much every terms of service for any platform that you're on, you are giving the platform an unlimited worldwide license to use your content. Okay, and there's some type of statement in every one of those terms of service. Now, I don't even have a single story of one of those companies like taking your content and going and like stealing it or duplicating your blog. But I think that depending on what your content is, the fact that you are granting a company a worldwide license to your content could be an issue. Now, some of them will say in there that they only have the license to use the content to improve your services. There are a lot of different phrasings around these statements. But if this at all scares you, go back and read the terms of service for the platform you're using and make sure that you're okay with it. They don't own your content. No, you own your content, but you are giving them a worldwide unlimited license to use your content, and then depending on what the statement says. They can take it and use it in it. I don't know the exact sentence in that terms of service. You'd have to read it, but they can take it and use it for certain purposes in the TOS. Yes. With or without attribution was the question, and I don't believe it specifies in most of the terms of service. So you do need to read the terms of service. Some are much better than others. Some of them say just for the purpose of improving your experience on this platform. Some of them don't have those qualifications, and they can take it and use your blog in advertising and things like that. So, and I bring that up. Personally, I probably wouldn't care too much myself about that. Like, I'm not too worried. Actually, if they used a screenshot of your blog in their advertising, that'd be kind of cool, I think. But a lot of bloggers in particular are very up in arms about this, and so they won't use a lot of these platforms. So that's why I bring it up, so that you're aware of the issue, and you can go read it yourself and decide how you feel about it. Yes?
Would it be a way to protect just one of that like general stuff, and then later on your website say full content goes to such and such and they can purchase that?
Repeat that for me again.
Well, I mean, if you sell things like your intellectual property, you're selling ideas.
Okay.
Would it be an idea to not put that in the blog and be taken away, but kind of give them general guidelines and say specific, so put it your part of your website if you want to click on anything like that, you could at least scroll where your content is going.
So let me repeat this back and see if I'm understanding you correctly. So if you are selling like intellectual content, like info products, things like that, would it be good to publish part of it openly and then have the rest of it protected, like under an area where they have to pay first and then go see it? Yes, that's definitely how it's usually done if you have content you're selling. In terms of like what we were just talking about, you're not, when I say that in the terms of service, you're not giving them ownership of your content at all. All you're doing is providing them a license to potentially use it for other purposes. So they're not necessarily like taking your content away or doing anything like that with it. Does that help? Yeah. Yeah, you're not giving away ownership of anything. You're giving, if you read the text, you'll see what it says. Go ahead.
You might already touch this here in a little bit, but I also blog on an industry-related website. It's very, very popular in real estate. And I found that when I do that, my SEO for my blogs comes up extremely high because of the massive amounts of information that we need. In your opinion, is it okay, or is it good for us to use those larger sites? Because my website itself is so little. I blog on that. I also blog on the WordPress content. I could do it like that. I could do it by changing it a little bit. What is your opinion on having it in both? Which way is it?
So the question is, she's in real estate, and she blogs on larger. What was the site you mentioned? Active Rain. So it's like a aggregator for real estate information. It's a blogging site for realtors. Okay. So yes, obviously you've already seen. You said your SEO went up when you're posting things on there. Yes. Right. So are you asking if your blog should be on Active Rain versus on a standalone site? Or both? So I think there's multiple answers to that question, depending on the situation. I think it's always good to have content on kind of aggregation places like that to help drive traffic to your site. I think you need to make sure that if you do post content there that you're allowed to link back to your WordPress site. To help drive traffic there. I think that you definitely need to have site on your blog that is unique so that there's a reason for people to come back to your blog and not just always see you on Active Rain. As far as the duplicate content penalty, I would probably, I don't know, Phil, if you want to say anything about that because you probably know more about that than I do. Don't write duplicate content. So I'll repeat this all for you, those of you online. Okay, let me just repeat. Let me catch everybody up that's not in the room. So Phil's suggestion was to just don't do duplicate content. It's just not a good idea. And we had a suggestion from the audience asking if we couldn't post it first on our blog and then put it up on the other site, therefore pushing a duplicate content penalty on the other site, not on us. And Phil's about to answer that one.
It doesn't work that way. So Google doesn't know for sure when content goes live because otherwise I would find super popular stuff, write my blog and backdate it and try to take credit for it. So what Google well, then here's the thing. It's on Active Rain every day, all day long, waiting for new content because that's what Active Rain is, right? Realtors from all over the country are pushing new stuff. So the Googlebot is just standing there waiting for that new content, where it might go to her site, once a day or something like that. In the scheme of Google deciding who wins content, it generally gives it to the bigger site with more authority. So you would have to wait more than a few days. The real answer is write different content because you can't canonicalize over at Active Rain, right? You can't say this really lives on my blog because most blogs won't do that for you. So if you're unsure of canonicalization, it probably means they don't offer it. So canonicalization is when you say, this is a copy, and here's the canonicalized original version here. If you could do that, then that's perfect. That's when you can spread your content everywhere and have it come back to one central original piece. But most places don't want that because they want your content. Yes, sir. There's that.
Yes?
I might suggest that you do a variance. In other words, you write your list for one post it on the other site with say one you wrote for a particular buyer and the other one you wrote for a retailer. And then I would put a link back from one to the other. So basically make 4 or 5 variations if you were supposed to place different content. Make sure it's different enough that it's not going to be penalized, and then just put a link back and just say foreseeable, this for that particular application.
So the suggestion from the crowd was to take that blog or that content and make different versions of it, which you can then spread out into different places, but also drive them all back to your site for more information and more content. So that's great. I mean, you could write 5 different articles on one topic that are fairly similar, but different enough that you don't have a duplicate content penalty. So I think that's a good suggestion. Does that help? Yeah, you're welcome. All right, one question back there. Okay. So the question was, if you post a blog, should you also post it on Facebook and post it on LinkedIn? And I think what the advice that you're talking about is post the link back to it. Don't post the actual content, but post a link back to it from all of your social media, and especially Google+. WordPress doesn't automatically send it out. Now, WordPress.com has a feature where it will automatically send those links out to all of your social media. But WordPress standalone, if you want that to happen, you have to set that up and have a plugin. Yeah. No, it's doing what it's supposed to. Is it posting? It's not posting your entire blog on LinkedIn. It's just posting links, right? Links back. Yeah, it'll have like a paragraph, like just to get people interested in what the link is, and yeah. So you're doing it right. Yeah, very good. One thing, since there are so many of you on blogging platforms, I'm going to warn you about this because this is an issue I've run into with just about every person I've ever converted from WordPress.com or Blogger over to self-hosted WordPress, and that is image size. When you're on blogging platforms, a lot of times they have things in place to compress your images for you. So you can upload fairly large images, like Blogger is a great example. You can upload fairly large images to Blogger, and it will compress them for you, and it will serve them up pretty well, and you'll have no problem. If you try to then move that blog over to a self-hosted WordPress, when the images come over, they're going to be just like you uploaded them. So if you're pulling them right out of your camera, you're taking pictures at a large file size, you're pulling them right out of your camera and uploading them to Blogger. If you ever try to move those to WordPress.org, you're going to have some serious bandwidth issues. So I see a couple of people smiling, so I think somebody's dealt with that before. So make sure that if you are doing a lot of images or any images on the platform that you're on, that you are optimizing your images first. Yeah.
So I want to tell you about something I just realized this weekend. My wife runs a small blog, and she takes pictures with her iPhone and uploads them to WordPress, and WordPress crops them and everything for her. But what we realized is sometimes those images would flip 90 degrees to the right. Does anybody else find that? That's an iPhone problem. And it's the way iPhone takes pictures, it thinks this way is correct, and when you flip it, so when you put them into some platforms, it looks at the EXIF data that comes off that photo to correct it, but not always. So if you've run into that problem, the only way to fix it is to take the pictures off your phone, put them into Photoshop or whatever, make sure they're the right way, and then upload them to WordPress. It took me about an hour to figure that out.
Phil just saved you an hour. Okay, so this is going to vary. Now, if you have a theme, whatever platform you're using, if you have a theme that has a certain size of photo that it displays at, it's best to upload the photos already sized at the display size. If you don't know or you don't have it, a lot of times it's kind of arbitrary, but I'll tell people if you shoot for kind of a 600 by 400 and try to keep the actual file size, like the KB, pretty low. The lowest you can get it, the better. You definitely, unless you have a specific situation, try not to upload anything over 100K. Yep, and that's up here, my first bullet. You also can use an image optimizer tool. Smushit is one that will actually do a lot of compression for you before you upload the images. Go ahead. Yes, so the question was, when you upload a file, and we'll use Facebook as an example because I think probably all of us have run into this. If you have a smaller image on Facebook, it'll tell you this image is too small and it won't load it. And I think if I remember correctly, it wants it to be 200 pixels wide, but I've uploaded pictures that are the right size and I still get that error sometimes. I don't necessarily know why Facebook does anything it does. But it definitely has to be larger than 200. Mark? Okay. Right. So, Mark, and you said 500 wide for Google Plus was the number? 506 pixels wide for Google Plus. Yeah, I think Facebook is technically 200, but it doesn't always seem to work well. So the other things that he said, I'm going to try to paraphrase, so tell me if I miss anything. A 2:3 ratio for Google Plus? 3:2? Landscape orientation, wider than it is higher for Google Plus. Now, there is a thing called the Facebook debugger. If you just Google Facebook debugger, if you're having trouble getting a link to show up properly, let's say you did a blog post, right, and you paste it in Facebook and it just looks horrible. And then you go and you change the photo, and then you try to paste it in Facebook, and it didn't change. It's not picking up your new picture. If you Google Facebook debugger, the link will come up for you. You can put that URL into the field on the Facebook debugger, and it will refresh Facebook's memory of that post, and it should then pick up your new picture. Not only that, it will tell you what the problem is. And that's where I see the 200 pixels a lot, because it says your image isn't 200 pixels. So Google Facebook debugger, and it should be like the top search result. Sure. So, so there is auto sizing built in. Is it in WordPress.com too? Okay, so there is auto sizing in your settings in WordPress. You have, and I believe it's under is it under Media Images? You can set the 3 default sizes that the media library will size your images at. So thumbnails, I think by default it's 150 by 150. So any thumbnail of a picture you upload will automatically be 150 by 150. So you can go into that setting and adjust those to look better with the theme that you have. So there's a thumbnail, a medium, and a large. And I think, okay, 300 by 300 for the medium. 1024 for large, something like that. So those are the default settings when you first install WordPress. So you can go in there and find those settings and adjust them to look better for the theme that you have. The last bullet up here, well, actually I guess we're on the third one. If you use many images in your posts, show fewer posts on your homepage. So I have a client who is a fashion blogger, and she posts 15 images every time she posts, and they're large images. She's a fashion blogger. So they're, you know, full body outfits, showing things off. One thing we did to help her load time is we lowered the amount of posts that show up on your homepage. In your WordPress settings, there is a number, and I can't remember what the default is. I want to say 5. But when your blog page comes up, you know, it'll show your most recent posts, and then it'll show some posts under that. So if you are using a lot of image in your blogs, you want to lower that down so that only one post shows on that homepage if you have a lot of images, and it will speed up the loading time for that page. So that's another great trick. Anybody know why loading time is important? 2 really big reasons. What? User experience. Who's going to wait, right? No one waits more than 3 seconds. Loading time is how long it takes for a page to load. So when the moment that the URL is called through the browser, that the person hits the page, to when all of the content actually displays for them is the loading time. Yeah, if you want to make sure you're ideally optimized for mobile, it's very important to speed up that load time for user experience. There's another really big reason. You SEO veterans know this. Why else is load time important? Google. Yeah, Google looks at load time when it ranks you, when it looks at your website. It takes load time into account. And I believe this could have changed because SEO changes, it seems like every day, but it's looking for 4 seconds or less. So if your pages are taking a long time to load, that could be giving you a SEO hit. So the question is if you have it set up so that the page renders and then the images load, is that bad for SEO? I've never asked that question, Phil. So Phil's answer to that was no, that shouldn't impact the time. Yes.
So in order to figure out load speed,
to figure out load time, there are several tools. One of them is on a website called, I believe it's pingdom.com. Thank you. Pingdom.com. And if you go there and go to their speed test tool and put in your site URL, it will run a test and tell you how fast it's loading, and then there's all kinds of data about kind of what the problem is, why it's maybe loading slower, and how you rate compared to all of the other sites on the internet. What if you don't want to do that? Would you rather not know? I'm sure there are people here who would be glad to do that for a price. There's one right behind you. The room is full of them, no problem. You also have a CDN, a content distribution network. Is anybody using a CDN? Which ones? Cloudflare? What is it called? Oh, AWS-CD? Oh, Amazon Web Services, okay. Anybody else? Cloudflare? So what a CDN is it basically takes a copy of your images, and when somebody loads your page, it pulls those images from the service, the content sharing service, rather than from your web server. And so it's a lot faster because that service is optimized for pushing those images. There is one, I have not used it, although Phil has talked about it, in the Jetpack plugin. There's Photon, and I believe that service is available to WordPress.com people, or it's built in. Okay, Phil's going to talk about Photon.
So I also noticed Photon on my wife's website the other day when images were twisted, and I was looking at them, and I noticed the images weren't, slash image blah, 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 blah. It was like i3.wordpress, and then the rest of it. And that's when I said, oh, that must be their CDN. So in Jetpack, and I don't remember turning this on, so it might be on by default, is this Photon, which loads your images, caches them, and they're in the WordPress CDN to hopefully make things show up a little quicker. The downside to that particular cache is there's no way to flush it. So if you have wacky images turned sideways on your site, for example, there's no button to say flush my images and pull a new copy of it. You just have to wait till they expire out themselves. That is self-hosted. I forget which is which, but.
Yeah, .org. It's inside the Jetpack plugin. How am I doing on volume? Okay. Yeah, it's inside the Jetpack plugin. And incidentally, since we're talking about site speed, if you have Jetpack enabled on your self-hosted site, look at every module and make sure you've turned off the ones you're not using. A lot of those modules are activated by default, and so they're running in the background, and if you're not using them, you're slowing down your site speed for nothing. So check all those Jetpack modules if you have it installed and activated, and make sure that those modules are turned off if you're not using them. Question?
Yeah. after that SEO plugin, it's
So the question was, if you have a lot of images in a post and you use the built-in more tag, so what will happen is the page will load up, but only part of the content will load. So from that more tag on down, it's not loading until they click more, and then it's loading. And so yes, that would definitely help. Yeah. All right, anything else on images? Because we're going to jump on to something else. We've got like a whole smorgasbord of different things we're going to touch on for you today. All right. So what about WordPress SEO? You know, a lot of people say WordPress has some of the best SEO out there. And I would have to say from my own experience of converting websites, that's true. Now, I have not touched every platform out there, so I don't know. I don't have personal experience with everything. But I will say anybody I've ever switched from WordPress.com or from Blogger does have a lot of improvement once they've switched to self-hosted WordPress. This is an interesting case right here. I don't know how well you can see it, but this is a client that I switched over. They are a small local company. They don't have any social media. They don't even have social media profiles, like none. They don't have a mailing list. They don't do any online advertising. They build very high-end homes, and so all of their customers come from word of mouth. But what will happen is the customer, when they hear about them, they will go to their website and check them out before they call them. So that's why they have a website. We moved them from a builder platform to WordPress. And the blue line is February, which is the month before we started the move. The red line is the first full month after we did the move. They more than doubled their traffic. Some of that was organic, some of it fell under that kind of unknown category, but considering they don't have a mailing list, they don't do social media, they don't do advertising, they don't do anything. This is the closest I could come of a case study to show you just sort of the natural difference that happens when somebody switches from a site builder, they were actually on Yahoo, to self-hosted WordPress. So I was shocked. When I pulled up the analytics, I was shocked. Because I've seen everybody I've moved has had some gain. But most of them, you know, they're blogging several days a week. They're on social media. They did a big splashy announcement that they have a new website. So you don't really know, you know, how much of it is their promotion and how much of it was natural. And I would say this is as close as I can get to showing what happens when there's not promotion going on. Yeah, and I would say that the average pages per visit went from 2.9 in February to 3.51 in April, and that's because the new site was much better than the old site. I mean, the old site had been built in the early 2000s. I actually built it, so I can say it sucked. I mean, it was like the first website I did, you know, a long time ago, and they finally decided to upgrade. Maura up here in the front actually worked on that site, so good job, Maura, for our great results. But really it was the site design, the pages per visit and the length of time is really attributed to the site design. It's been very consistent. They've not seen another big jump, but it's been consistent in their numbers. So it's not a fluke, at least not yet. We'll see if it drops off. One of the things that it could be, you know, the site, it wasn't completely stagnant before, but they're not blogging or anything. So sites that sit there tend to kind of fall in ranking. And now the site's completely new. So you could attribute some of it to the fact that there's been new content added to the site. There's a lot of factors that could attribute to this. So they will not begin blogging. They will begin, I think, adding some new content. They're going to be adding a lot more photos of houses. They don't actually have spec homes or anything like that. Everything they build is completely 100% custom. So as they get projects that they want to show in their portfolio, they'll be adding it, but it's not going to be like a regular blogging type thing. So we'll see what happens. And, you know, they're so busy, they don't need to. It is. It's good eye candy, we said. Anybody else?
How do they get good SEO if they just have images? Because I was told that, you know, Google
They-
calls the site their content.
Right.
You just have
She asked how they get good SEO if they just have images, and they don't just have images. We made sure that they wrote some nice paragraph descriptions of the home for Google to read. So it's not just images, but it is mainly a very visual portfolio. Yeah. Good question, though. Well, I'll see. I'll have to ask them if they'll. Yeah, I didn't get their permission. Yes.
I just heard the WordPress about a year and a half ago. I used to have read here. And I get WordPress. And I guess the question is, when I have a blog and I post it, fix things. And however, when I get registrations, I send them.
Okay. Right.
Is that a good strategy versus not the contents, not coming back to my site?
So let me repeat this and make sure I understand. So you have a self-hosted WordPress site and you're blogging. And when you say that you're getting these registrations and you're sending them to Constant Contact, are they signing up through a Constant Contact email form? Yeah, so you're creating a mailing list. Do you send to the mailing list? What do you send to the mailing list? Are they just like copying and pasting your blogs in and sending it, or are they actually writing content to get people back to your website? Unique content. Okay, yeah, that's an excellent thing to do, and in fact, it's one of the most important things you can do. And we're going to talk a little bit about mailing lists as we go. So that's very good. All right. Tags do not count for SEO. Sorry. Not in WordPress. I figured everybody would be like, oh, man, I didn't hear any disappointed sighs there. Come on, you guys. Just there, thank you. Yeah, so let me kind of explain what I mean here. So when I say tags, what I'm talking about is when you add keywords to a post. So like maybe you're selling t-shirts and you tag it pink, blue, orange, t-shirt, kid, girl, cotton, you know, those little kind of tag descriptors. Folks on Blogger, tags are really big on Blogger. Everybody have ever moved from Blogger, including myself when I used to have a Blogger site and moved to WordPress, had like 1 billion tags because it's highly encouraged kind of by the platform. In WordPress, what used to happen is people would keyword stuff these tags, right? They would use these tags with all the keywords to try to build their SEO. Well, Google figured that out, and so they've kind of lowered down the importance of these tags. What they are important for is user experience, okay? Because when we talk about SEO, there is SEO in terms of your search engine and getting people there, but there's also sort of the user experience. And there's things you can do with user experience to drive traffic as well. So let me explain what tags are in the context of WordPress. So you have two things. You have categories and tags. I'm going to use the example of a cookbook, okay? Hopefully we've all at least seen a cookbook or understand what a cookbook is. Categories in WordPress are like the table of contents, okay? So you can see here we have to begin with, which is the appetizer section of the cookbook. We have plate mates, which is your salads and your vegetables. Hearty entrees, which is your casseroles and meats. So categories are like the table of contents. You open a cookbook and you start looking for breakfast, lunch, dinner. What are the main categories my users are going to want to see on my blog? Okay. Tags are like the index. Now, I think indexes are kind of falling out of use now that we have ebooks because you can just search in the book, so you really don't need an index so much. But if you stretch way back to when we used to use indexes, indexes kind of work like this. Let's say that I have peaches in my kitchen. Let's say that somebody, nice neighbor, left me a whole bushel of peaches on my porch, and now I have to figure out what to do with them besides put them on somebody else's porch. So I'm going to pull out my cookbook. I'm not going to look in the table of contents. I'm going to flip to the index in the back, find peaches, and have a list of every recipe in my book that takes peaches. So that's what tags are really for. So let's say that you're selling children's bedroom accessories, And if your son is at all like mine, my son is 5 years old, and he absolutely loves cars. Anything cars, yes, we got a fan. So I might use tags in a blog to click on the word cars, and then all the accessories will come up that have to do with cars. So that's what tags do. They help your users. So when you're thinking about what tags to add to your posts, think about how your users are going to be navigating your content. Don't think about the search engine. Think about your user, okay? And how your users will be finding things on your blog. That's going to help that time on page or time on site stat go up. Yes?
So for our text, we do is we get a menu on the side of the blog with about 30 categories. That would still help with that. So it's actually a menu.
Yes, so the question was, if we have a menu of categories in the sidebar, will that help the SEO? Because the words are on the page, it will, but categories I also don't think are super high in Google's list of things to look at because, again, people took advantage of it. What I have found about categories in just my own experience, the fewer you have, the better in most cases. 10, 12 max. I once had a site that had, I think it was 40 categories in the sidebar, and it was too much. I just made one change to the site. I took it down to 20. And time on site doubled. People were clicking, number of pages viewed doubled. Because too many decisions is too many decisions. So don't make them choose that much. I mean, I think as long as they're appropriate. If you only have 3 categories and there's only 3 things that make sense, then 3 is the right thing to do. One of them is uncategorized right now. Yeah, let's not use uncategorized. Go ahead.
I was going to say, categories. If you're using categories in your permalink structure, then they can have to tailor in.
Good point.
So if you're selling shoes and your category is leather shoes, something like that, and when you build out your permalinks, you put the category into it, then it can have more than
That's a great point. So what Phil said was if you put categories in your permalinks, so when you go to your settings permalinks and you choose what your links are, having the categories in the permalinks is going to have the best impact on your SEO. Now, warning, everybody put the pen down for a second. If you have an existing blog, do not go change your permalinks tonight. If your blog is existing and it's already been indexed by Google, those URLs are already in the index. If you go change your permalinks, all your URLs will break. Okay? So don't go change your permalinks if you have an existing site. If you want to, if it's important enough that you want to change those permalinks, there is a very important process you have to follow called redirecting. If you're going to change all those links, you have to use a redirect plugin. There are several methods of redirecting, so that you make sure that all the old URLs will redirect to your new version. I would say, and people may disagree with me, that it's probably not worth it for the most part. But I'm sure there are cases where it is worth it. It's a lot of work. So please do not go home and change your permalinks on your existing website. Yes? Okay. So, okay, so let me repeat. So you've got an HTML website and you've got a WordPress.com blog. And you want to take them both and combine them into one self-hosted WordPress website. And what's the best way to do that? So yes, you can take you're going to have to take your HTML content and basically, cut and paste it into the WordPress site. The WordPress.com, you can export all of that content and import it into the new self-hosted WordPress site. You will have to redirect. I believe on WordPress.com, and I haven't fact-checked this, but I believe you can have it redirect to your new site. I think if you look in their help or call them or email them, they can tell you how to redirect the WordPress.com blog to self-hosted WordPress. Your HTML site, you'll probably have to manually code the redirect. And you can, if you want, you can take the time and have every page on the HTML site redirect to the matching page on the new WordPress site, or you can just have that whole site redirect to the home page of the new site, which is much faster and easier. But then people may be searching for content. So it depends, I think, how much work you want to put into it, how important those things are, you know, how much traffic you already had, that kind of thing. So you may want to take the time, if you have a lot of traffic, you may want to take the time to do a page-for-page redirect. Yeah, and if you Google how to redirect an HTML page, there's so many online tutorials on how to do it. It's a little piece of code you just put on each page telling it where to go. If you're redirecting in WordPress, you can use plugins as well to do it, but you'll have to redirect from the HTML site over. So. Phil says look up HT access redirect. Thank you. Good questions, you guys. This is great. HT access, so HTACCESS. How many plugins is too many plugins? We're going to talk about that. We're going to get there. Yeah. One more, the one that crashes your site, right? No, we're going to talk about that one. All right. Who has an SEO plugin already on your WordPress site? Who has the Yoast SEO plugin? It's the majority of the room. This is the one that that I generally recommend. So what this will do is it'll help you make sure that you're doing the right things on your posts and pages. And it's the official name, if you're going to look this plugin up, if you don't have it yet, is WordPress SEO. And Yoast, it's like toast, Y-O-A-S-T, is the company that makes it. The reason I like this plugin is because it teaches you how to SEO. So if you don't know, if you're a beginner at SEOing your content, this plugin is going to help you learn how to do it. So I have a little screenshot up here, and it shows you that it puts this box below your content box on pages and posts. And it analyzes for a focus keyword. So you type in a focus keyword. In this case, this is from my website, Updating WordPress was my focus phrase. And it went and looked through my article heading, my page title, my page URL, my content, and my meta description. And if I had not had that phrase in there, it would be red and tell me it's not there, and I would know to go fix it. And it adjusts on the fly. As you make the changes, it adjusts and tells you, okay, now you're good. So this is what I mean by it teaches you how to SEO. If you're new to this, this is just invaluable. Absolutely invaluable. It's a free plugin, by the way. So is there any rule for how many words you should have as your keyword phrase? So in general, I would say fewer words are better. But if you think about what a keyword phrase is, it's the exact phrase that a user is going to type into a search engine to find, hopefully find, your content. So if you put in a 5-word phrase, you're probably lowering your chances that that user is going to type in all those exact same 5 words that you just typed. So in general, I would say this 1 word or 2 words. It's going to depend. It's going to depend on the thing. If you're looking for motorhome campsites in Raleigh, that's not too many words, right? If that's what you're targeting, so it kind of depends. Yeah, it all depends. So she asked if all those words have to be in the URL. So whatever phrase you're targeting, whatever you type in there, it's going to analyze your post for that exact phrase. So if you do motorhome campsites in Raleigh, and that's what you've typed in, and it's all green, and somebody searches on motorhome campsites, well, that's inside your phrase, right? So you may also kind of rank for that. But the ideal is you want to pinpoint what people are most likely to type into search engines when they're trying to find your content. You would want, so you would want to get your URL as close as possible. Does it have to be exact? Yes or no? There's different levels of SEO. There's different combinations of things you can do. It's generally these, one of their five things are the most important, and they're going to count the most. So yes, you do want to try to get these 5 to be green and say yes. So the question is, can you create separate landing pages? So motorhomes in Cary, motorhomes in Durham. Yes, you can, but don't put the same content on them, because then you have duplicate content issues. So if you're going to create motorhomes in Cary, motorhomes in Raleigh, motorhomes in Clayton, they better be different. As long as they're different content, you'll be okay. And yes, somebody just said you could take that further by getting a separate domain name for each one. Now, let me tell you something. If I were to land on a site, I'm looking for motorhomes in the Triangle area, and I click on your link and I see motorhomes in Cary, and then I click on another link and I see motorhomes in Durham, and I see that it's you, and you've got all these pages that are just a minuscule little difference from each other, I'm going to be like, ugh, this guy's trying to scam me. Like, you know what I mean? Because it's kind of borderline, I guess. So, you know, yeah. Well, I think officially getting tagged as spam and having people think you're spammy can sometimes be 2 different things. So always think about, you know, when you're doing SEO, it's tempting to always try to focus on what works for the search engines, what works for the search engines. But really, it's the people who are buying your product. It's the people who are your customers. So what's best for the people? You know, it's a question you have to weigh. Great question. The question was, if your theme has SEO built into it and you put in an SEO plugin, could they conflict? And the answer is they could. A lot of theme builders will work with Yoast and the other popular SEO plugins so that the theme will shut off the theme SEO when you install a plugin like this. I've seen that happen. Sometimes both will be there, but it doesn't really cause a conflict if you just use one or the other. I have never personally had a site like shut down or have a problem because of that conflict. Is anybody in here? Because then there's so many combinations of themes and plugins. Tags, meta descriptions, and really basically mess up your whole SEO. Does Google care if there's 2 title tags? Does Google care if there's 2 title tags, Phil? It'll use the latter one? Okay. But I think if any of it also shows to your user, that could be an issue too. Like if anything is looking funny, like in your snippet for Google, I mean, it'd be good to really check through it and see. You can always contact the developer of the theme. If you have any problems like that, if that's going on, go to your theme developer, send them an email, look at their support boards, let them know what's happening. A lot of times when you tip off a developer, whether a plugin or theme developer, that something like that is happening, they will go fix it and push out an update for you. Depends on, I think, how much they're working on that particular item. So the question is there a rule of thumb for how many times the keyword should be in your content based on how long it is? So on my next screen here, you'll see that Yoast kind of does have a rule of thumb. If you click on the page analysis tab in the same box that I just showed you, you'll see that it looks at a lot of other things, and it gives you this red, yellow, and green light. And one of the things it looks at is keyword density. So it'll tell you whether it thinks you need more keywords based on its analysis of the content. personally, and there's a lot of debate on this. If you Google this on the internet, you'll find all kinds of opinions. And generally, I mean, nobody knows if there's a magic number, what the magic number is. My rule of thumb is, again, it goes back to your readers. You know, you're creating content for them. If you have content that sounds stilted and like you're clearly stuffing it with keywords, you're going to lose credibility. So I think here's my process. I'll write my content. I write it without even thinking about SEO, to be honest. I write it thinking about my readers. Then I'll go back through and I'll say, okay, here's what I'm focusing on for SEO. Are there opportunities in here where I can naturally use this phrase and it makes sense and it sounds good? And then I add those back in where they make sense and sound good. And usually, I always get the green light, and that's all I can go by is the green light. Do you have any opinion you'd like to add on that?
Yes, I do. When you are reading a product page and you're going to buy a deck chair, how many times do you need the word deck chair in that page for you to feel comfortable buying it?
60.
Right. So Google's talked a lot about this even before the Hummingbird update went into effect, which is much more semantic than the old way, which was we need 9.3% keyword density. And there's a video out there where Matt Cutts talks about how often you should use a keyword. And I will do my best Matt Cutts impersonation now, right? Like, oh, there's a keyword. Oh, there it is again. Oh, there one more time. We get it. Like, he talks about this fact that you do not have to use it a certain density. They get it. So when I talk to people, I say, if you put it in your page title, use it as a send trail down to the headline if those are different. Try to throw it in that first paragraph, but don't kill yourself. Google is getting a lot more information from the semantic way your page is marked up. They know their algorithm is no longer looking at keyword density as much as it was a few years ago.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, so write for your readers. That's the most important thing. They're the ones ponying up the money for your stuff. So, the other thing I would caution you is I've actually seen people totally freeze because of the screen. Like they're writing a blog post and they go to the screen and they're like, I can't do that. I don't know what to do. Don't let yourself get caught up in that. You are probably, I've never seen a post that's all green, okay? I don't know, maybe there's a prize for the first person who hits a post that's all green. Usually what I'll do is I'll just kind of look through this. I'll see if there's anything I can do quick and easy to fix some of these issues, and then I just move on. And at the top of your post, and I don't think I have a screenshot of it in here, but they'll give you an overall red, yellow, green. As long as your overall light is green, don't try to turn every one of these little lights green. It's just not going to happen. Yes.
I turned it on, it was like SEO, and it was like, bam. So I finally found this.
Yeah, you are that.
Yoast is getting personal. Yeah.
Oh, it's just those little tweaks that, like you said, they change so much.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and the story she just told for those of you online is that she's a very seasoned blogger, but when she turned it on, it told her SEO was bad, and it really has helped her learn kind of how to hone that in and do the right things. And I'll say, and it's been a few years since I switched to this, but I believe if I'm correct in my numbers, my organic SEO when I switched to this plugin immediately went up about 13% was the number, but that was a few years ago. So, any other questions on this screen on the Yoast plugin? I highly recommend you install it, play around with it, learn from it.
Is that social? Is that where we connect for it to go like somebody else will talk about it?
No, the social tab is for you to specify what image you want social media to use for this post. It lets you put in an extra, I think this one has an extra description, but it lets you kind of determine what could be put on social media when somebody shares that page. I can't remember exactly which fields are on that, and I don't have it in here. There are so many other features to this plugin. Like we don't have time. So definitely get in there and poke around. But that helps you determine like what image goes up.
Didn't they just move the Google authorship out of the user?
Mark, the question is Google authorship. Can you? I know. So Google authorship, I think he was saying you used to be able to connect it in Yoast, but now it's in the user. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Mark's answer for those of you online is that the old way that this was done in the Yoast plugin created site-wide authorship. And so now by connecting authorship to the user, it allows you to actually attribute authorship to the person who wrote it. So if you have, what that means is if you have guest bloggers, okay, or multiple authors, you actually want to create them a user account and put their information into that user profile, and on the post they write, attribute them as the author in the post. There's a little field at the bottom of every post for author. So what I've seen in the past is somebody will create an account that's called guest blogger, and all the guest bloggers will go under this guest blogger account. Well, you're cheating them out of their authorship benefits if you do that. So every guest author you have, create them a username and fill in their profile so that they get the authorship. Google authorship. Okay? And if you don't know about Google authorship, because we have a lot of new people here tonight, if you've been coming any amount of time, you probably hear about Google authorship almost every meeting we have. Come back to more meetups and you'll hear about it. But Google authorship, it's how you connect kind of your G+ account to your website so Google knows who you are. Look that up if you're not sure what that is. It's very important to help with your SEO. Oh, I do have a screenshot. Look at that. You done good. There's the overall, the overall green light. I did. I rarely get green lights. No, just kidding. I did Photoshop it. All right, so there's another piece to this plugin. Getting people to click. All right. How many of you have ever been doing a Google search and you find a search result that's like, oh yeah, that's what I want, and you click on it and you get to the page and it's not what you thought it was. You're like, wait, I read that in the description. I'm here now. It's gone. Okay. Yeah. Annoying, right? That is a misuse of this feature. So in the General tab on Yoast and on other SEO plugins and in a lot of themes that have built in, you can establish an SEO title and a meta description. And see where it has snippet preview there, and doesn't that look like a Google search result? Okay. If you were to type in SEO title and meta description, it would change what Google pulls and displays as the search result for this page. Here's why this is really important for bloggers. Okay. A lot of times, the first paragraph you write, you may be writing it for effect, right? You're writing your introductory paragraph to catch the reader's attention. If that's the paragraph that is pulled into Google, well, that doesn't always make sense. Like if you start out like, one day in May, I was walking my dog, and and you're telling a story in your blog post, well, if that's what shows up in Google, I mean, who's going to click on that, right? So this is your opportunity to create a better summary of what your blog post is about and have it displayed to help get people to want to actually click on it. So that's kind of what you can use this for. Yes? It reads it all. It reads it all. But I mean, what's on your page is what it looks for to see what it's about. Now, your meta description is also what your blog post is about. So you're not supposed to do the first example where you write something completely different in your meta description. So say that the post where I talked about walking my dog was actually about this great new like doggy bag dispenser, because maybe I sell pet supplies and I'm talking about my pooper scooper, right? So I start the story out with I'm walking on a nice day. In my description, I might say, you know, I just tried out the new so-and-so pooper scooper, and you won't believe how wonderful it is. And maybe that's your meta description. So your keywords are still in there. If the post is about the pooper scooper, and maybe even the brand name of the pooper scooper. So you're still following that consistency in your meta descriptions. You're just phrasing it so that somebody who's seeing the search result understands what your post is about, versus seeing your awesome intro that you wrote about your dog walk. Does it make sense? So much, not so much? Okay. All right, so you still do want to use keywords. Questions about that? All right. So this is just an example of it filled out where I changed the SEO title and meta description, and it changed the actual snippet. Yes? Oh, that's great. So if your keyword has an abbreviation, like continuing ed has CE, if people are going to search for it CE abbreviation, then you could use that as your focus. If they're going to type it out, you could use that. It depends what they type in search. Now, can you could you include both? Absolutely. You could refer to it as CE one time and refer to it as continuing ed another time. Now, ideally, Google wants to find out, what your post is about. It's going to look for one of those phrases, like what is this page about? So you want one to be more prevalent, but you can include the other one too. All right. Is it a page or a post? One question, I know Phil has told me he gets this, and I explain this a lot in my classes. What is the difference between a page or a post, and why does it matter? Pages are the blue boxes. They're the structure of your site. They are static. Blog posts are, within themselves, they're a stream of posts that come out in a timeline. So that's why the green boxes are kind of all against each other. When a post comes out, it's at the top of your timeline. It's at the top of your blog post page. And then it works its way down as you post more things on top of it. So your blog is sort of a little entity inside your website. Among itself. The question is, when do I post something as a post and when do I make it a page? Okay. So static pages on your website should be things that users come back for all the time. So here we've got home, services, the actual blog page, an about, a contact. Those are all static pages. The blog posts are about that pooper scooper you tried out. They're about the new pet food that's 100% meat. They're about those more current topics that you're blogging about. Now, blog pages have pages too. Like, they're pages on their own, but they're within the structure of this continually rolling timeline of your blog. Okay? Does that make sense? Are there questions? You can, well, technically, there's one blog utility inside WordPress, but there are all kinds of different ways to extend it. You can create custom post types, which would, in effect, create a second kind of blog functionality. You can also segregate a blog using categories where, let's say I have a category just about the pooper scoopers. I could actually make that category a page on its own where it kind of looks like a blog about the pooper scoopers, but it's actually functionally a part of my main blog. But I say every blog that has a category of pooper scoopers will show on this page and look like its own blog. It actually happens very often. Somebody was saying that 2 blogs on one website can be very confusing. For example, if you're a recipe blogger and in your menu you have a menu item just for dessert recipes, and just for, right. I've seen it done successfully. I think it depends on how you set the expectations of your visitor. So I think you can have kind of 2 different blogging categories like that. I think it just depends. Yes. So does a page or a post get better Google juice? To my knowledge, I mean, it's pretty equal. You don't think there's any? Yeah. Yeah. It knows, but it does. Authorship goes with posts. Okay. Yes.
So I just wanted to add quickly, if you guys are ever doing a blog post that you want to keep at the top and you don't want it to drift down, is anybody ever in that situation? In WordPress, at least, there's, forget where it is, maybe in the publish section. No. So this is, you can set it to sticky, and that means it stays at the top. So if you've got something that you kind of want to keep there forever, you can leave that set.
Yep. All right. I just have a couple more things we're going to cover. One of them was a question that was asked earlier, and it's about the RSS feed versus the mailing list. So an RSS feed, it's really simple syndication, been around, I don't know if it's been around pretty much as long as the internet has. And it happens on every WordPress website automatically, where whenever you do a post, that post can go out in a stream and be either emailed to people who subscribe to it, or it can go into a blog aggregator. Does anybody use Bloglovin or what feed?
People in here use an RSS reader.
Not too many. Not too many use. Yeah, since Google Reader left, I mean, come on, what's left? No, just kidding. Yeah. If he's wishing Apple TV could put in a custom RSS feeds. Yeah. So let me talk to you about kind of the impact these two could have on your readership and on your ability to attract people to your website. Because again, this is a decision you have to make based on your own situation. So the RSS basically emails a post anytime you post it out to the people who are subscribed or into their aggregator like Feedly. The mailing list, if you have people come to your site and sign up for your mailing list, their email and information that you ask for goes into a third-party mailing list like MailChimp, Constant Contact, iContact, Aweber, some of the big ones. And you can then either set up, well, in some of them you can actually set up the RSS feed to go through the mailing list, but you can write emails to them. So in that case, when you have a blog post, you would write an email and say, hey, have you ever, wanted to replace your pooper scooper? Check out my latest blog. I have dogs, can you tell? And then they would click in the email and go back to your website. So think for a second, because there could be either circumstance. Do you want people to get your full blog post in your email and read it, and then go on reading email? Or do you want them to click through and come back to your website for some reason? And it can depend. I know somebody who sends out an email newsletter on local Raleigh events, and she doesn't care if they come back to the website or not, because all the paid advertising that she gets is in the email. So it doesn't matter to her. So she's fine with having the RSS feed go through. But I would say most of you who are trying to attract customers, yeah, you're going to want to do the second option, the mailing list option, versus the RSS feed, so that you can attract the readers back to your website to read other blog posts, to look at your products and services you have available, especially if you're selling advertising on your website. Those numbers, getting people back, help you sell more advertising because you have higher visitor numbers. Now, you can also use your email advertising numbers. So many people get the email and open the email, etc. But just think through that process for your business goal. Are you trying to get people back to the website, or do you just want them to read the blog? And again, there's not a wrong answer. It's the right answer for you. You want them to spend money. That is the right answer.
You can do that to the Constant Contact.
I'm not sure if Constant Contact offers the RSS feed. I know MailChimp does. No, but like on MailChimp, you can actually connect your RSS feed from your website into your mailing list. Right, you cannot send email through the RSS feed. Okay, say it again.
I think what you
ISS is not email.
Right,
ISS is a protocol that allows you to get your blog and
right.
that's all.
Or if you go through, right, right, right. So one of the options for the RSS feed, to be exactly correct, is to, for example, burn the RSS through FeedBurner, and then FeedBurner actually sends the email to your people. The email doesn't just automatically go. They have to subscribe to the RSS through a service like FeedBurner.
This scenario around content. I'm not going to the website once a week to check if there's something new. Yep, they can find RSS video that have something new on this site. If I just get an excerpt from the site, I go to the site that I'm for.
Exactly.
Or those who are kind of opposite is also true and important.
Right. So if you send through the RSS feed only a portion of a blog post and then have them click to come back through and read the rest, that could work as well. Yeah.
Certain blogs I read that don't have email, that's this subscribe feature. Their technology, right, kind of know when they probably do have RSS, they're just not making it public. With the WordPress site, you just go to domain.com/feed and see the feed there. Or that's the default for all WordPress.
So even easier, if you want to subscribe to an RSS feed of a blog, I'm just repeating it for our online audience. If you want to subscribe to the RSS feed of a blog, but they don't have any way for you to subscribe to it on that blog, if you use an aggregator like Feedly or Bloglovin, and you just put in the URL of that website, it will automatically pull the RSS feed for you. Yeah. If they're not using the question was if they're not using WordPress, do they still have an RSS feed? And I would say that anything can have an RSS feed. So if depending, like if it's a blogger site, it has an RSS feed. Oh, a different service completely. Not that I'm aware of. There's no service that's not an RSS feed that could tell you that a site has published a new blog post. Nothing easy, Phil says. ChangeDetection.com? Okay. Okay. All right, so last really big topic here, plugins to consider for blogging. So these are types of plugins. Now, you guys, like I said, I'm big on use the right tool for the right reason. So these are my general recommendations. You may have different things that you need. You may not need some of these, but these are, in general, the things that I look at for most sites. Some type of a related post plugin, some type of a popular post plugin. The reason being that when you put a post title up in front of somebody, they're likely to click on it. So you may notice if you have popular posts running in your sidebar, they will continue to be the most popular posts on your blog because they're in your sidebar and people will click on them because they're in front of their face. So there are some plugins out there that will allow you to decide what popular means. Most comments, most page hits, and you can switch around those popular posts. Yes, Jetpack has a built-in related post now as well. And we'll get to some specific plugins in a minute. Recycling old content. You guys, I don't know, who follows Derek Halpern of Social Triggers? Anybody? Derek Halpern of Social Triggers? Phil does. Everybody should if Phil does. Mark does too. His big thing is, you just raised your hand because Phil did. His big thing is, you went to all this trouble to write a blog post this week. You tweeted it 5 times. You know, you put it on Facebook once. Then you wrote a second blog post, and you forgot all about the old one. Don't do that. You put a lot of work into these blog posts. make sure that you're continuously putting them out there, because if you have 25 readers right now and you write a blog post, 6 months from now you might have 500 or 600 readers who've never seen it unless you put it back out on social media in front of them. There's also the rest of the world to consider who have not read it. I've got that on the next page. Yep. Just republicizing your old posts. And I've got plugin recommendations on the next page. I just don't want us to get distracted from the purpose of the plugins. I am going to put up a link for you, yes. We'll talk about that in a sec. All right, let's just go to the next page. I was trying to like keep it contained. You guys are not letting me contain it. Not letting me contain it. All right, yet another related post plugin. By the way, I put some up here. These are not the only good plugins in the world, you guys. There's a lot of great plugins out there. There are over 30,000 plugins in the WordPress.org repository. These are just the ones that I happen to use and like. Yes?
The other one for SEO is the all-in-one.
The all-in-one SEO pack from Semperfi. They are local. Yep.
12 million
Yep. They do. Let's not go there. Phil says the all-in-one just got hacked. Okay, so WordPress popular posts is the one I use that allows you to decide what the criteria is for popular, so that you can switch things around in that sidebar and get exposure to more posts than just what has the most hits. Revive old posts. This used to be tweet old posts. Anybody use the old tweet old posts? What this will do is you can set the timing on it, and it will randomly tweet out your older posts. This actually really does work to increase traffic. I've done it myself. You can say, like, every 8 hours, choose a post from any of these categories that is this kind of age, and you can exclude you can exclude categories. Yeah, and it lets you put a little kind of pre-tag, I guess, so that people know it's old content. That's one thing. If one of your loyal readers clicks on it and it's like, oh, this is an old post, they might get, a little mad. So you can say, from the archives, bless you, from the archives, or best of, and you can append that to the front of every tweet. These are the actual names. Thank you. I was trying to build suspense. Akismet, comment spam, absolute best thing ever, built by WordPress by Automatic.
Not the best thing ever.
Oh, what's the best thing ever, Phil?
I tell you that it's great, but you need another plugin to go with this one. And I didn't know about this a few years ago. Matt Cutts just mentioned it offhand, and it's called Cookies for Comments. And it will drop your robot spam to 0. Because what it does is it tries to give a cookie to everybody who comes, and since robots can't accept cookies, they're not allowed to leave comments. Cookies for Comments. So both of those together do a fantastic job.
Yes. Akismet, it's up there. It comes already installed with most WordPress installations, I believe. Another one is GrowMap Anti-Spam Bot. I also will use that to stop spam bots sometimes. It does a really good job. GrowMap Anti-Spam Bot. It kind of does what Cookies for Comments does. It has a couple different methods, but GrowMap. Yep. So I didn't specify a particular comments plugin because there are so many different ones, and it depends on what you want. The built-in WordPress comments is actually pretty good, but if you want more control over it, Jetpack has a comments module in it where you can start using the comments from WordPress.com. Disquis is another big one that people use. It's DISQUIS. It depends on what you want to do. A lot of bloggers come to me and say, I don't want people to have to give their name and address every time they comment on my site. Like, they just don't comment if they have to enter it. So the solutions for that are something like Disquis, where they create an account. I don't know if that's any better, but then your website knows who they are. So those are some options. We already talked about WordPress SEO. My favorite backup plugin, and this is a paid plugin, is Backup Buddy. I depend on Backup Buddy a lot. It's by iThemes. For security, WordFence is awesome. It combines the functionality. I used to use like 4 or 5 different plugins to achieve what WordFence now achieves. It will let you block IP addresses. It does real-time monitoring. You can see who's logging in and out of your site. If you have like a membership site and you want to track logins and logouts, it does limits the number of logins. There's so much it does. The one warning I will give you about WordFence is it can be a bandwidth hog. Because it is scanning real time, if you have speed issues on your website, you probably don't want to use WordFence. Yes? Yes. So you can turn off settings like the live login, logout to reduce the drain on your bandwidth. Right. Right. He's saying it's still logs, so you won't see it updating constantly. Yeah, in the settings there's all kinds of things you can turn off. There's a free version of WordFence and a paid version of WordFence. Shareaholic for me is still my go-to social sharing, and this is where on the bottom of each blog post people can tweet and like. They just did a major overhaul of this plugin. I want to say it was either late last year, I think. Completely changed the interface. So if you used Shareaholic before and you didn't like it, you may want to take another look at it because it's very different than it used to be. The image optimizer, there are several, but if you have not been paying attention to the sizes of the images you're uploading, this is a plugin that will go through your media library and help optimize your images that are already there. So you don't have to do it manually. That's a big one. Yeah, EWW, image optimizer. There's a couple other good ones too. Oh no, you should absolutely optimize them before you load them. But if you haven't been, your options are go back to every image and manually do it and re-upload it and reattach it, or run this. No. No, it doesn't do anything on top of just optimizing what's already there. Yep. So this is one you would load it, run it, and then uninstall it. You wouldn't need to keep it on your site. WordPress editorial calendar. If you're a heavy blogger, if you have guest authors, this will be a godsend to you. This creates an actual calendar in your dashboard, and any draft posts will be in a list on the side, and you can drag and drop them into the calendar to schedule them. Say a current event happens. You just move the post schedule for that day and put in your new post. It allows you to manage that posting schedule much, much better. Now, if you're the occasional blogger, like me, who blogs every few weeks, then this may be overkill for you. But if you have a lot of guest authors, if you blog a lot, this is going to be a real time saver for you. The alternative to not having this is go into every post and set the date and time you want that post to go out. So you can do this without a plugin. This just makes it easier. W3 Total Cache. There's several caching plugins. I'm just going to warn you right now. Caching plugins can be tricky. I was at a presentation on caching plugins where the person who gave the presentation brought his demo site down because he flipped the wrong switch. You can bring your site down, and it can be sometimes hard to get back. So I'm just giving you that warning. If you're going to use a caching plugin, read the instructions before you go clicking anything. What caching plugins do is it creates a local copy of the pages on your visitor's browser, so that every time they come back, they're not reloading a page. And so it creates faster loading times for you and less draw on your server. They refresh every so often, and you can set it to what it is. I have a couple of blogging clients, and what they do is every time they post a new blog, they go in and hit a button to clear the cache so that all the people coming see a new post rather than the old cached post. Yes, and I'm not a caching expert, so I can't, I'll be honest, I can't really speak to that one. Do you want to speak to that, Phil?
Right. You're right. That's what that's what W3 Total Cache does. But the thing I like best about the W3 one is it also gives you some, or it can write in, or you can copy and paste into your htaccess that sets expiration on a lot of the images as well on your site, so that you don't have to then look for those again, because those images are never going to change from that post you did 6 months ago. So it can cache all those images as well. It's a nice caching tool. Kelly's right, but the other thing that's good about the W3 Total Cache is it will say on there recommended, and if you just kind of follow the recommended ones and click those, you're usually, 3/4, probably 90% of the way there of doing the right thing.
It depends on your host. It depends on your host. So he said that WordPress comes with a caching plugin that's not activated. Some hosts include that and some don't. So it just depends what they include in the package. So, yes.
Sure, that's what it does with their site. But it's only when you're running it on yours. They don't care how the hell you do it.
What's the logic behind it?
So for the people online, the question is, what's the logic of not including the caching in WordPress core? Phil doesn't know. I don't either. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and it's getting a little bit in depth in caching, so I'm gonna maybe we can talk about it afterwards a little bit. But yeah, so cache. So I think there is and I don't have the link for it, but I believe there is a place you can go to make suggestions for upcoming versions of WordPress. So that might be a good one to go and plug in. I think if you Google it, it'll come up for you on the WordPress.org site, and you can go insert suggestions. So that might be a good one to go put in. Any questions on these plugins? Like I said, these are the ones that I've used and I like. There are other good plugins. That's actually why I created Plugin Coach, because I found as I'm teaching and with my clients that's the biggest frustration. Well, that's the second biggest frustration is like, what plugin do I use? How do I know what's out there? How do I know it's going to do what I need it to do? And so I created Plugin Coach to sort of fill that gap and try to give you more information on, what are the better plugins, why are they good, are they going to work for you, are they not going to work for you? So these are some of the ones that I particularly like. WP Clone is a plugin that she likes that didn't get mentioned.
Amazing. So you load it. Okay, so let's say you want to develop a site. Let's say you want a site. This lady wanted a resource site. So we loaded WP Clone, her site, and then I set up a subfolder or subdirectory on my site, and then I went and so then I loaded WordPress. I just set it up, and I loaded WordPress, loaded WP Clone, and then I cloned her site, gives you a link, go to your site, you load the link, and load the whole site back. And so I redid her site, and then I cloned it, and then went to her site, and I uploaded it.
So it clones the WordPress site, the database and everything. Interesting. So WP Clone was the recommendation. All right. So that's if you're moving a website, it sounds like you can use WP Clone to move a website.
Yeah. So
okay.
you have it loaded. You can tell it to create a clone, and it will generate a link, and then it will stay there. And it should be there. The next day you can do it again. those links will remain intact, but you can take those links and load them to another site elsewhere, and it completely clones that site.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Okay.
It does exactly what that.
Interesting, but easier, it sounds like.
Easier and free.
Yes. 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 So Google XML Sitemaps is a plugin that was recommended, and the question is, does it overlap with something else? So yes, if you have another plugin installed that creates the XML sitemap for you, then it would be duplication, and you wouldn't need it. So the WordPress SEO by Yoast does have an option to create an XML sitemap. You can turn it off if for some reason you don't like the way they do it. I believe they break up into multiple sitemaps. I think they have like if I'm right, they do a media sitemap and a page sitemap, which is a good way to do it. But if for whatever reason you don't like it, you can turn it off and load another plugin. Or if you don't have a plugin that does it, the Google XML sitemap would be good. So yes. Short answer, yes.
If you put your sitemap in your robots.txt down at the bottom, sitemap folder, wherever your sitemap is, all the spiders will find it. You don't have to individually ping them. Let them know.
So,
What's the pain in the neck?
so the question was, when you create the sitemap, do you have to ping all the search engines to tell them there's a new one? And Phil's answer was, if you link to the sitemap in the bottom of your robots.txt, all the crawlers will find it automatically, and you don't have to worry about that. Very good. All right. Here's some things I want you to think about not using plugins for. So, and actually, back on this page, I recommended no more than 12 plugins. Now, that is a general statement. All right. If you have a low-end shared hosting, you signed up for kind of the, $3, $4 a month shared hosting package, you're on a shared server with a lot of other people. You don't have a whole lot of juice going on there. You're going to get around 10 plugins, you may get to 12, and you're really going to see some drag on your site. So you want to try to keep it down. Now, if you're paying more for hosting, or you're with a specific WordPress host, you may be able to have a lot more. So it is situational. But in general, I'm going to give you 10 to 12. So there are some things that I consider a waste of good plugin power. These are things that you can do without a plugin fairly easily. Instructions are either provided by a service or you can Google the instructions. Things like connecting Google Analytics. Google gives you the code to do this, and most themes in WordPress give you a box to paste it in. So copy the code and paste it into the box, and you're done. You don't have to have a plugin for that. Google authorship as well. We already talked about hooking up the Google authorship in the profile. Yes, say something.
So the other thing about Google Analytics is, especially the newer version of it, they want Google Analytics up in the head. In the old days, we used to put it down in the footer. If your theme doesn't give you a way to easily input that, don't hack into your central theme code to add that, because the next time an update comes through, it's probably going to get wiped out. So use the function.php, which lets you insert stuff dynamically. If you do a Google search for, inserting into the head in functions.php, WordPress, you'll see how to do it. But be careful, because much like other things, if you screw up functions.php, your site will go down. And I don't just mean the front, I mean the back too, and you'll be unable to get to it. So it's terribly worrisome, because I was working on a guy's site not too long ago who didn't have shell access. I only could get to it through FTP, and I had a typo. And so, of course, the whole thing goes white, right? And I went, oh, crap. So I go to do it again. But the FTP, for some reason, I couldn't overwrite the file that was there. So for about 4 hours, the site was down. Like, no biggie, right? He's just selling stuff on the web. So just be careful. Make sure that you have a backup ready to go and that you can move stuff around.
Mailing list forms. They are plugins to integrate mailing list, Constant Contact, MailChimp into your website. They do make things a little bit easy for you. They create widgets you can drop in your sidebar. All of those services will give you code that you can paste into a text widget. So that is going to save you some plugin power to use for something else. You can style those forms with CSS if you know CSS or if you're handy at doing online tutorials. You can pick up enough CSS to style those forms a little bit. PayPal buttons. There are some good PayPal button plugins, but again, you can go into PayPal, go into the button factory, set up the button you want for your product, copy the code, paste it onto your page in WordPress. So you don't have to use a plugin for this. One thing, blog rolls. Again, we don't have a lot of straight bloggers in here, but having a blog roll in your sidebar is very important if you are a blogger or part of a blogging community. They can really take up some bandwidth, especially if you have the kind of plugin that senses when somebody updated their site and moves them to the top of the blog roll. It is a great feature to have, but if you're already struggling with your site speed, you can hard code your blog roll in a text widget just by putting links to each blog. So consider doing that instead. And the last one is social media icons. So that's like on top of your sidebar where you have Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and if they click it, it goes to your profile so they can follow you. Those are fairly simple to hard code as well. They're just a little, either a picture and a link, or Font Awesome is a website that gives you icons that you can use there. So check into creating those social media icons by hand rather than using a plugin to create them. And again, if you're not using a lot of plugins and you want to use a plugin for this stuff, it's fine. They're out there and you can do it. But if you're looking, maybe there's 25 plugins you wish you could have. These are some things you can do without plugins, so you can just save that plugin power for the really good plugins. Generally, 25 is too many. Sorry about that.
And even the ones that aren't active can cause a drag.
Yeah, Phil just pointed out for our online folks that even deactivated plugins can cause a drag on your website. Not only that, but you have to update them. And updating is painful enough without having to update all these plugins you're not even using. So make sure you delete any plugins you're not using. All right, so is Janet here? Janet Kennedy? Oh, she's not even here. So she asked a question on the boards. Janet, if you're watching online, this is for you. She asked, what is up with the Hello Dolly plugin? Who's seen the Hello Dolly plugin? Everybody, multiple times. So this is a plugin that has been with WordPress, I guess, since the beginning. It's been there. Created by Matt Mullenweg, who was the person who started WordPress. Most people consider it pretty much useless. What it does is it will put phrases from Hello Dolly in your dashboard, like happy little messages for you to see. It's a Janet plugin that we heard. So it's speculated that this could have originally been an example plugin, back in the early days of WordPress. But there is a little known fact. WordPress major releases are actually named for jazz musicians. I don't know if anybody knew that. They name all WordPress releases. And I actually have a little prize. So I have an ebook called The No Fear Guide to Updating WordPress. And if somebody can tell me the jazz musician that 3.9, WordPress 3.9 is named for, who's fast on the Google here? Ozzy Osbourne is not the answer, Phil. Not Miles Davis. Anybody? Who? Jimmy. Yes, Jimmy Smith. Woohoo! Oh, Chrome Bullet. Good job. See me after, and I'll give you a code to download a free copy. Good job. There's also a channel on Last FM with all of the different jazz musicians that have been named for, or the WordPress releases have been named for, that you can listen to. So if you're into jazz, that's kind of a neat one to check out. All right, that one was for Janet. All right, so last slide here, you guys. Steps to success. So we promised you some steps to success. So this kind of is an overall, define your goal. Are you blogging? Are you content marketing? Understand which one you're really doing so that you know what your goal is. You know what kind of keywords you're looking for. You know what kind of plugins you need to get your viewers, your readers to do what you need them to do. Choose the plugins that help you achieve those goals. I can't tell you how many times I have people who sit down to build a website and they get caught up in the theme and they get caught up in the cool plugins they can use, and somebody tells them they need to have this, so they go download it, and they need to have that, and they go download it. And they stop thinking about what is going to help me achieve my business goal, what is going to bring in the money, like we said up here. You know, am I using this plugin because it's just really cool? Or am I using this plugin because it's going to help me achieve a business goal? So please keep that in mind and choose the plugins that help you achieve your goals. Create a process for posting that includes SEO and marketing, okay? It's hard enough just to write blog posts. A lot of us, you know, we just write it and we get it up there and we're like, oh, thank goodness I blogged this week. That's great. I do. But you know, that's not the end of the thing. You know, you've got other stuff to do. And if you can create for yourself a nice process, like, okay, I've written the blog post now. Have I done these particular things with SEO? Have I set up my marketing? You know, do I have a plugin that's going to tweet it? Do I have to go post it on Facebook? Do I need to create a couple of images to go out there on SEO to attract attention for this blog post? What is your process? Write it down. Make yourself a checklist. And then it's going to be a lot easier to maximize the power of everything you put out there. Okay, Phil's got something to add there.
Your titles suck. Do better with your titles. So when I even write the ridiculous tiny little titles for these meetups, I give it a lot of thought because I know you guys give me a millisecond to decide whether to click through. So, for example, this month's, right, I could have named it SEO for Bloggers, and you would have been like, meh, that's sort of interesting. But I put enough thought into it to say essential SEO for Bloggers or something like that, just so you'd think, oh, maybe there's something there that I don't know. Like, think about your titles more than you're doing now, because yes. And you're never going to believe what happened next. So think about your titles, and also think about the images that you use, because think about the way you're consuming content now. 30% of all clicks are driven by the title that is attached to a particular piece of content. Another 30% is driven by the image that is attached to that. And you can all nod your head because you're thinking, yeah, I clicked on that stupid article because it had a really cute image attached to it. So do those two things when you're working on your stuff to put out there. For me or for Kelly? Yes. Yes, winner. Right. Right, there's no context.
Right, so I make sure that my title includes the information and
Right, there's a great post, a copy blogger called something like How to Write Magnetic Headlines or 5 Ways to Write Magnetic Headlines, something like that. Great advice. Go read that post.
I would also say include call to actions in your images. I posted a survey. I was taking a survey for different things about WordPress, like, you know, what was your biggest frustration? And I posted it in an entrepreneur group I'm in, and I got some responses. It was great. Somebody else posted it, and their image said, take survey. They got, like, so many hits. Like, people are going, I took it. And I'm like, wait a minute, you didn't take mine? Don't be afraid to put a call to action in the image itself. And don't be afraid to create more than one image to use on social media. If you have one blog post, but you have 3 different images and you use them, all 3 on Facebook over a few days' time, you know, maybe this image didn't appeal to someone and they didn't look at it, but maybe your second image will. Yes? Mark recommended Canva for creating photos, C-A-N-V-A. Mm-hmm. It was Canva, C-A-N-V-A. Mark says it's the best he's ever seen for those of you online. Excellent. Are there any last questions for me or for Phil? Yes. Okay. So you have an e-commerce website that was like custom built, and how would you add a blog to it? Right. So I think there's probably several ways. One way is to install WordPress in a subdomain and use that as your blog and link it to the menu of the store. So make sure that your hosting company allows you to have multiple, everyone will allow you to have subdomains. So that'll work. And it's only one instance of WordPress, so I think you should be good. Yes. Okay. So you have a separate WordPress.org blog, which means you're hosting it. Is it on the same host as your... So you have two different hosting companies, one for your store and one for your WordPress site. Yes. Yes. So you could move that self-hosted WordPress site to a subdomain of the store and do it that way. Now you could leave it on a separate domain and link them in the menus, but then the SEO, they're two different sites. So if you're wanting to try to use the blog on that site for those reasons, then yeah, you'd have to move it. Which you can move the whole thing. You've got the plugin Maura recommended. What was it? WP Clone? WP Clone? Maybe give that a look. Yeah. Yeah. Repeat the question.
He's asking what happens when you change your SEO plugin. So Yoast's plugin keeps everything separate, right? So if you ever move, you can transfer it. And that was a big pet peeve of his. I remember as an early Thesis user, him bitching and moaning because Thesis puts it right into the main database, and if you ever moved, you'd have to redo it all. So it really depends on what plugin you're using. A lot of them now are more modular and have a pull in from all-in-one or pull in from Yoast, that sort of thing. So yeah, the one you're moving to, see if you can pull your old stuff. Otherwise, it is walk through it. Right, to the biggies. Yeah. Yeah, see if there's something that'll do it. Did you have another one?
Yeah, and talking about RSS
I think it depends on the user. But from the hands in here, when I said who uses RSS, about 5 hands went up. And there's about 100 people in the room. I think everybody here uses email. Right.
It is confusing because when they have the subscribe button in the sidebar, you don't always know by looking what you're subscribing to. You could be subscribing to their RSS feed, and that's kind of one way you get the automatic email, or you could be subscribing to their mailing list and they're sending you the blog post through the mailing list. So it is confusing. A lot of people don't even understand when they see the subscribe, they don't even know which subscribe it is. So how can you tell? Go ahead. Oh, the double opt-in. Yeah. That's not always true, though. I've seen RSS subscribe where you put in your email and it subscribes you. Mm-hmm. But So FeedBurner though has the ability for you to put in your email address and be on the RSS that way. It's still not an email. It's still not an email list where someone could send you an email, but they're just sending it to your email. They're sending the RSS to your email. It is kind of confusing, but yeah. But the double opt-in thing is great. Like so, because of the Can-Spam Act of 2003, if you ever join an email list, you don't have to have a double opt-in, but that is one clue. If you get the email that says click here to confirm, you're joining an email list for sure. Some people do use a single opt-in for that, but you'll usually get sort of like an autoresponder from that saying like thank you for joining our list, that kind of thing. With subscribing to RSS feeds, you often don't get that. But again, I don't know that that's a hard and fast rule. So. Yeah, I think it completely depends, like Phil said, on are they, blog readers will often subscribe to RSS feeds. If you're not a blog reader, a lot of times you're used to email lists, so it depends on your fans.
I want your updated list or something, you get them your email address, they have your email. You're in their system.
Phil says they have your email either way for our online folks. Yes. So there's a question about the proposed changes to net neutrality, what impact that will have. Do you want to?
I don't think it's going to have any impact. I think all the predictions for video are that soon it's going to be 80% of things.
He says
that's where we're going, and that's what AT&T and Time Warner and everything.
He says it's just going to affect video, and that's where we're going. But I think that is a much bigger conversation. Yeah. Let's get these last few questions because that could be a really long conversation. Go ahead.
On our blog, we use Jetpack sharing, and on it, it has numbers that I think it's telling me how to share it. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's actually
I asked because it has numbers, but it doesn't really reflect that in my Jetpack. I've had a lot of shares posted on Facebook, but way less
Let me repeat the question, then I'll let you answer. So her question is, she has the Jetpack social sharing enabled on her self-hosted WordPress blog, and the numbers are really high, which is very good, but she's not seeing that reflected in her WordPress.com analytics, and she wants to know how accurate those numbers are, and I think Phil's got an answer for her.
Those numbers are accurate. It's total shares, though. It's not just shares from that page. So if you have something that was shared 50 times and on your page twice, your page will show 50. It's going to show total shares for that piece of content. Yep, it's an aggregate number.
Good question. Yes. Are there any disadvantages to using dynamic widgets? Can you give me an example? Oh, you mean the visibility setting? Like you can say some users see this widget, some users see this other widget? Or do you mean like a rotating widget like AdSense where every time it loads, it's loading different content? So she's saying, so it's a dynamic widget plugin that allows you, when you're posting that page, you can choose specific widgets to show up just for that page. Okay, I have not used that plugin. Have you used that plugin, Phil?
No, but I would say...
I would guess yes.
I would say if your page is cached, there's no difference, right? Because it's going to cache the page exactly how you set it up. But if the page isn't cached, to get to the point earlier, every time that page is called up, that's additional calls to the database, which are probably the most expensive thing as far as page load time. So if you've got a bunch of those firing, it could slow down the page. But if it's cached, it won't.
Somebody, dynamic means it's not cached. Very good. Yes. Okay. Right. So let me repeat. So you're blogging for the purpose of blogging. You're not selling anything. Do you intend in the future to sell something or make money from your blog? At this point, no. Okay. Okay. So for our folks online, that she is possibly going to have some books on Amazon.com, so she would direct people that way. How important is SEO to you in that situation? I would say if you're trying to build your reader base, it's still very important. I mean, you're not doing it necessarily to earn the money, but without readers, you don't have a blog. You have to have readers. So I would still say it's pretty important for you. And, you know, it depends too. When you're blogging as the purpose of what you're doing, you're building a tribe, you know, which is a little different, I think, from building customers sometimes. You're serving them in a slightly different way, and what you're asking back from them is different. You're not asking them to buy something, you're asking them to share what you're sharing. So it's kind of a different interaction. Yeah, you're welcome. Everybody should install Google Analytics. Everybody. It's free. I don't know, can you install Google Analytics on WordPress.com? You've got Jetpack Analytics on WordPress.com. You've got built-in analytics. Does anybody know that? I've never thought about that. Do you know if you can put Google Analytics on a WordPress.com site? If you have your own domain? I don't know. I'm gonna look into that and see if you can or not. Yeah. But you've got built-in WordPress.com analytics. Yeah. Okay, yes.
I still have front page websites out there from years and years ago.
Front page was awesome.
I still get ranked by Google. I redirect them to my main website or just rebuild them or leave them alone?
Oh, what a question. So he's got websites built with front page out there that are still ranking. So they're still active, you're still doing things on them?
I don't update them.
You don't update them very often, but they're still ranking really well?
Well, not really, but not like they used to.
Right. I mean, I would say switch them, but I would say do it carefully so that you keep that SEO ranking. Yeah, or one thing you can do is look at the URL that is there currently, and try to match your permalinks. Now, this could be easy or hard depending on what the existing URL is, but if you can try to match your permalinks, it's if the permalink's the same, if the link is the same, once you redirect your domain, then automatically that's the new page. But I don't know what your current URLs look like. They might have .htm on the end, probably. Yeah, which technically you can add in WordPress. You can do a custom permalink. So, all right, I think we're gonna probably wrap it up. Phil, do you have any final words before we sign off? Thank you, everybody. Great questions. You're awesome. Thank you very much.
And if you have any more questions or any more trouble, just hire Kelly at wpplugincoach.com. She's very affordable. I don't know if that's true, but she's excellent. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.